Kia ora and welcome to chapter 23 of the resource, The Future of Learning. In this last session we just had, we looked at the future of the curriculum and what that would look like, and we identified 6 different domains. The first one we're going to be looking at is this whole notion of what is the purpose of school. And the purpose of school last century was really about ensuring that young people were able to enter into their society successfully. That was the purpose. And so we wanted them to learn to be diligent, to do as they're told, to work on their own, to actually aspire to know things. And that was good for last century. But what is the purpose of school in this century, when so much of that has changed so dramatically? And we now have access to information via these devices so quickly and so easily. What does that do to our purpose? And when we started interrogating that, we really started to realise that what has actually changed is our society. And therefore, the adaptation we need to make is we still want them to be ready for that society or community they're going to go into, but that community society's expectations are very different to what they were last century. So when we start looking at that, we really want to make sure that each of these people that are coming into the society or community actually can learn and can adapt. And so we need to make sure they have the capability to learn. They need to understand that learning process. And when we started unpacking that still further, we started to realise, well, actually, increasingly now, we're seeing ourselves as a global community. And that is something that's going to change over time. We're gradually seeing ourselves more and more from a global perspective as opposed from a centric village view of life. And partly this device here is responsible for that, because I can now access anyone in the world. I can phone people anywhere in the world using WhatsApp or one of the devices or one of the apps that are out there now to actually ring anybody, anywhere, anytime, free of charge. I can video them free of charge. I can contact and work with people collaboratively around the world easily, simply, and at very, very little cost, courtesy of this device. So that changes the very notion of what we're talking about in terms of learning. So that changes the purpose. And the purpose of learning we've sort of got to at this point in time is to ensure that education for each of us empowers the learners and educators with the capacity to learn efficiently and effectively, with the acquisition of the competencies and the learning process, because that gives us the capability to outwork those things. Without the learning process and the competencies, we don't have that capability. And then we need to educate this generation that they actually fall in love with the world, that the world they live in is really exciting. That curiosity that they have should be explored and encouraged and grown to really grasp the beauty of the world that surrounds us. Yes, there are things that go wrong, when relationships go wrong and people misunderstand each other, etc. But most of our world is extraordinarily beautiful. It really is. It's a wonderful place to be. And we need to sort of embed this optimism in our young people. There's a lot of pessimism out there, but our job as educators is to embed optimism there, because we want to leverage that curiosity and our desire to understand our world. Because as the dominant species on the planet, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility not just to ourselves as a species, but also to every other species and to the ecosystems that actually support us. So our purpose is growing and expanding away from the individual being catered for to the individual being part of a community, and their communities being part of each other across the world. Whatever we do here has an effect that rolls out around the world now, whereas it used to be confined to our village. And so now we want to leverage those with our ingenuity and innovation. We want to leverage our capacity to come up with solutions to the problems that challenge us. Why do we run the planet? What is it about us that makes us capable of that? What has given us that power? And most people don't really fully understand what those things are. If we were to categorize them, I'd say that really the one first one in the list I would give was that we're a community that trusts. We're the only species that trusts each other enough in large numbers to actually be part of new communities almost instantly. If we go to a football game, there may be 10,000 people in that stadium. In a football game, you become part of the football community. So you can actually just leave your things and go away and purchase some lunch and come back and they'll still be there. We can trust the people around us because we're part of the same community, even though it's a temporary community. We can go to the beach and we leave our clothes and phones and things on our towels. We go for a swim, we come back. We fully expect them to be there still. Now, sometimes they're not, because people come from outside and come in with a specific purpose of stealing those things. But that is very rare indeed. Right? If you're a member of the community, you support and will look after each other in that community. In other species, this is limited to about 5 to 12 other animals in a group. For human beings, we're talking tens of thousands. Our second one is language. The ability to precisely and in detailed language with complex vocabularies, we're able to actually describe exactly how we feel, what we want, what we need. And so the evolution of language has given us incredible power to communicate really, really effectively. Our third one of the reasons why we run this planet is simply because we cook food. Most animals, if you think about it, spend most of their day searching for food just to survive. We don't. We may eat for maybe an hour and a half a day. Right? And that's because we lounge around and chat to each other over a bottle of wine possibly and food, etc. We could do it in much less than that because we've learnt how to cook food, and that makes a really big deal. Fourthly, and this is what this resource has largely been around, is that we, and only we, have all 4 learning systems. Only us actually has this capacity to form new ideas and new concepts on the fly and hence make predictions about our futures. We are not the monkeys in the forest. We are not the cows in the farm outside. We're not racing around collecting nuts for the winter, not knowing why we're doing that. We know why we're doing that. So we are very unique. Those 4 qualities. We're communities that trust. We have language, complex language. We have learnt to cook our food, and we have the 4 learning systems. Those are the 4 factors that drive our capacity to actually run this planet, manage this planet. But with that comes this massive responsibility through our purpose statement. Thank you very much. Have a read of the chapter, have a look at the purpose statement, and adapt it to suit your needs. This is not something that came down on 2 stone tablets on top of a mountain. This actually is something that we've drafted for you to change and work with and adapt to suit your particular context and culture. Thank you very much, and all the very best.